When you walk into a school leadership interview, the hiring committee is not just scanning your resume. They're listening for the story that proves that you're ready to lead. In this episode of the Aspiring School Leader Podcast, I'm going to show you exactly how to craft your leadership story so that it resonates with the hiring committee, sets you apart, and positions you as the ideal candidate. What's going on, aspiring school leader? I am Dr. Donovan Smalls II, educator, best-selling author, school leadership coach, and I help aspiring school leaders confidently land their first leadership role and lead with impact from day one. Today's episode, we are talking about how to tell your leadership story. School leadership interview tips for aspiring leaders. Now, your leadership story is extremely important. And the reason being is because when you go into an interview, the hiring committee is not just looking over your resume, your qualifications to determine whether you are ready to lead, whether you are going to be the ideal candidate for the job. What they are listening intently for is your leadership story. Everyone has a story. And so you must know how to tell it strategically, specifically as it relates to that prominent question that we all get during interviews, which is, tell us a little bit about yourself. Maybe that's not a question, but it's a statement, right? And so when you get that statement, you have to be able to craft a leadership story, articulate your leadership story in a way that resonates with the hiring committee. And you still must be able to appropriately weave in your leadership story in the appropriate questions that they ask you. Again, when it comes to leadership, it's not just your ability to have the qualifications, to have all of the requirements, and you think that you are the ideal candidate. No, you have to do something. You have to say something that is going to set you apart. And what sets you apart is your unique story. We all have a story in terms of how we came to education and how education resonates with us and our importance of becoming leaders so that we can create environments for students that are going to be ideal. Whether you've had an inspiring leader and you want to be just like them, or you had leaders who didn't do things in a way that you thought was admirable, or whatever the case is, and you now want to be the change that you wish to see. Whatever your story is, you have to be able to articulate it and not downplay it. See, we all have a story as to how we have come to education, whether you have a parent you come from a line of educators, right? Or you have, like me, a grandfather who was functionally illiterate, could not read. However, he could wire an entire house. And so now when it comes to technical education, you have a passion for that and leading programs and developing initiatives that can help students get their certifications and get licenses in areas that we direly need in our society. You have a story. We all have a story, and it's important that you learn how to craft it and how to articulate it in your interviews. It can truly be a game changer. So as we get into 3 strategies in terms of how to tell your leadership story, number 1 is anchor your story in impact, right? This is not your chance to ramble about your childhood and everything that you went through. You have to really craft a leadership story that then lands on the impact that you want to make as a leader once you land the role. Hiring committees don't want to hear about your educational background. They can read that on your resume. They want to hear about the results you've created. They want to hear about the connection from your story to why you wanted to become a leader in the first place. And that's important to tell. So you want to frame your story around impact, the impact that you've made on students, teachers, and or the school culture. So for example, if you had an opportunity as you're doing your school leadership internship to lead a PLC, you don't just want to say, yes, I led this PLC. You want to talk about through the PLC structure, right? Unpacking the data, figuring out strategies along with your peers. You were able to help lead a team of teachers to raise student reading scores by 12% in one semester. There's a difference there. That shows the academic impact that you've been able to have as a teacher leader. And you want to be able to pull those experiences. And guess what? That is a part of your leadership story. I don't want you to think of a leadership story as solely being about how you came into education. That is critical. That there is a point in the interview where you can talk about those things. But you leading a PLC is also a part of your leadership story that you must be able to articulate. Don't downplay your experiences because you have leadership experience, even if you are not formally a leader yet. Even if you're not a teacher leader, you do have leadership experience, and I want you to tap into that. Don't downplay it and be able to pull out. And here's the strategy in that example, right? If you are setting SMART goals in terms of how you can improve student achievement, you can pull out those SMART goals and tie it to the outcome that you were able to get among your peers, and that becomes the example. That becomes your school leadership story. So again, I want you to listen through the lens of a SMART goal now. I'm going to read this same example, but I want you to listen through the lens of a SMART goal. Instead of saying I led PLCs, say through our PLC structure, I helped a team of teachers raise student reading scores by 12% in one semester. So in that example, what we're doing is we're taking a SMART goal and we're adopting it as my school leadership story when it comes to a question about data. And I'm able to articulate it in a way that, again, it spits back that SMART goal to the hiring committee. So you're able to make that connection from a story to the actual result. So strategy number 1 was anchor your story in impact. Strategy number 2, showcase growth, not perfection. You being an aspiring leader means that you have not formally had a leadership role, an administrative role. You're not an assistant principal. You haven't gotten that role yet, or supervisor, or any type of leadership role yet. And so nobody's looking for perfection. In fact, nobody is perfect. So any type of interview you're going on, regardless of what the position is, nobody's looking for perfection, but they're looking for growth. Schools aren't hiring you because you're flawless. They want leaders who can learn, adapt, and grow. And here's the key. Nobody is flawless. They want leaders who can learn, adapt, and grow, which means that you have to have a level of humility. You cannot go into an interview thinking that you know everything or portraying the fact that you know everything, because you don't. Sometimes if we don't check our leadership, the way that we see ourselves, we can come across as arrogant and not even know it. So you have to be mindful of the fact that you need to show up confident in your interview. Posture yourself with a level of humility, though, that shows that you are humble and you are not arrogant. Because people want to work with others who are going to listen, who are willing to learn, who people are going to ask questions and collaborate. What type of professional development do you invest in outside of the traditional PDs that you receive within your building, within your district? That is key. You cannot pigeonhole yourself to the PDs that you are getting within your district. The things that are recommended to you by your supervisor. You have to broaden your horizon when it comes to getting better. So again, strategy number 2, you're showcasing growth, not perfection. So I want you to share a challenge you faced, the actions you took, and the leadership lesson you learned. Again, that's showing growth. So for example, you might say, when I first led a grade level team, I struggled to get buy-in. I invested time in listening, adjusted my communication, and built trust that eventually turned resistance into collaboration. The funny thing is that particular example is very similar to an experience that I had when I was becoming a school leader. Before I became a school leader, I was a teacher leader. And sometimes when you start to begin to take a leadership role among your peers, people can feel like you are trying to be the boss of them, right? You don't have a formal title, so then why are you trying to lead us? We should be doing things and coming to an agreement with everything. And I believe in collaboration for sure. But you have to start realizing that as you start to have this desire to become a school leader, your lens is going to change. Your desire to lead is going to, your appetite for leading is going to increase. And you have to be willing to endure sometimes the backlash that you might receive from your peers, because now you are transitioning to being a leader. It happens in your mindset first, and then your actions will follow. Now, I'm not saying that you go around trying to tell people what to do, but you're going to have to start posturing yourself as a leader, not trying to position yourself as better than anybody, because none of us are. But what I'm saying is, if there's something that you can lead, you need that leadership experience, and it might cause a little bit of friction among your peers. However, you have to do things collaboratively, because guess what? The great leaders are the ones who collaborate. The great leaders are the ones who listen to other people. The great leaders are the ones who show humility. They take initiative for sure, but they take initiative in a way that considers other people. So make sure you do that as your mindset changes and you start to shift into the posture of leadership. Make sure that you're not forgetting about the people that you are still peers with, so that all of you can still be on the same page. And if you're not on the same page, if you're doing things with integrity, if you're operating in character, you're doing things with humility, then you have to be able to live with the fact that sometimes leadership ruffles the feathers of other people. It makes people feel uncomfortable, and that is okay, because you have a dream, you have a goal, and you are going to get there. I'm not saying by any means necessary, but I am saying that you have to stay focused on the long-term impact that you want to make on students and staff. So strategy number 2 was showcase growth, not perfection. And lastly, strategy number 3, connect your story to vision. Where are you going? Tie the vision and where you're going to the mission, vision, and core values of the district that you are applying for. You have to be strategic. This is not all about you. This is about how you can support the mission of the district, right? So think about how you can connect your story to what's already being done. You're not reinventing the wheel. You are trying to position yourself as an addition, somebody that is going to bring value to what already exists. A leadership story without vision is incomplete. Hiring committees want to know who you will be as a leader, because they are hiring you based off of your potential. Even if you are in a district where you are trying to elevate within that district, they still don't know who you are as a leader. They might know you as a teacher for sure, but leadership is very different. And I hope, I just really want people to understand what they're getting into when it comes to being a school leader. Just because you have 20 years of experience as a teacher doesn't mean you understand leadership. It's a very different skill. You have to be able to address the needs of other people. You no longer have the ability to complain and be in the, like, we all know that there's a meeting after the meeting, right? And oftentimes it happens in the parking lot. You can't engage in that. You have to be somebody that's going to look for solutions when everyone else might be looking for problems. Are you ready for that? You have to be solution oriented. So when you talk about connecting your story to vision, end your story by connecting your past experience to your future leadership role. So for example, you might say, as a classroom teacher, I often took the lead in supporting new colleagues, whether it was modeling lessons, helping with classroom management strategies, or simply being a sounding board. That experience showed me that leadership isn't about having all the answers, because it's not. It's about empowering others to grow. Moving into an assistant principal role, I want to continue that work by supporting and developing teachers so they feel confident and effective, which ultimately drives student success. That will be a powerful statement to end an interview with. But again, you have to be strategic in how you fit that into the questions that are being asked. And one of the ways that you can practice that is by every question that you get, start thinking of an example to tie it to. So if you're getting a question about equity, don't just tell them what you think equity is and what your definition is. You want to tie that definition into an actual story where you had to be more equitable in your teaching practice, or you were mentoring a new teacher and you noticed that there were some classroom management strategies that you helped them with, and now you're creating a story about the result that and the outcome that you were able to achieve together. Stories connect people. Stories are memorable. So I want you to think about the story that you are going to be able to tell, the stories that you can articulate that connect in an interview so that the hiring committee can see the leader that you are going to be. So today we talked about 3 strategies as it relates to how to tell your leadership story. Number 1, anchor your story in impact. Number 2, showcase growth, not perfection. And strategy 3, connect your story to vision. If you're listening to this episode or watching me on YouTube, you're an aspiring leader preparing for interviews. Here's the truth. You can't afford to walk in that interview room without a clear, powerful leadership story. It's what separates forgettable candidates from the ones who get hired. That's exactly why I created my 4-week program, Elevate Your Impact Interview Launch. And in this program, I'll help you polish your resume so it gets noticed. Craft a confident leadership story that resonates and practice interview strategies so you're fully prepared to land your first leadership role. So if you're ready to stand out and land that next leadership role when you go into your interview and feel more confident, reach out. Let's have a conversation so that we can help you get to where you know you need to be in terms of landing that first leadership role and making the impact that you dream of making. As always, I hope you have a great week of teaching, leading, and learning. Take care.